Yeah, we're live. I'm a little late. 7:12. 7:12. Got a lot of going on. Tonight we're going to talk about a couple things. One is the thumbnail that I have up is a fancy small block Chevy. Actually, what I did was took basically a junkyard small block Chevy, and then we painted it and put fancy polished and chrome various bits on it. Valve covers, intake manifold, fancy carburetor, air cleaner, even the water pump and all, or not the alternator, but the fuel pump and various things, basically just to kind of spruce it up. And I remember doing this. It was probably for a story and not for a video way long ago. And we wanted to show what guys normally do to make them look good. Because, there are two schools of thought there. One is that I almost put up a photo as the thumbnail of basically, because I hadn't seen one in a long time, of just a bone stock small block Chevy, everything orange, had a black factory air cleaner on it, with a snorkel and stuff on it, because you don't see those nearly as much anymore. Most of the time, if you open the hood and a guy has a small block Chevy in it, in something, especially if it's a Chevelle or Camaro or even a C10 truck or whatever, there's something done to it. It has finned aluminum valve covers, or at least an aluminum intake manifold or good carburetor, that kind of stuff. But this one was all stock. It had a quadrijet on it. It had an iron intake manifold on it. It had cast iron exhaust manifolds. They were Ram's horns because it was super fancy. But then I wanted to do this to show people, what guys normally do. And then the question becomes, where do you stop? Like, okay, look, I can remember going to the store when I had my Camaro when I was young, when I was 16, and they had a chrome coil. And you got to have a chrome coil, right? Because that's super cool. That's going to be, and they were saying, oh, it's got 60,000 volts or whatever. Oh, I definitely need that. I have to have that. That's really what's holding back my otherwise stock 2-barrel base engine in my 70s split bumper car. It's definitely the coil. And so, you get that, but then you think, while you're there, you're like, look at the chrome coil. You're like, man, it really needs a chrome air cleaner too. And then it needs chrome valve covers and aluminum intake and the thermostat housing that always leaks, and all that stuff. And then you start looking at all these things, and pretty soon you've chromed or polished basically everything on the motor. The thing is that it doesn't make it run any better. But the thing is, it is nice, and there is the other side to the coin as well. It doesn't make it go any faster, so I don't want it. That's one school of thought. And also, like sleeper mode, do a lot of guys want it to look like a stock motor. Like they want a motor with a cast iron intake or a cast iron looking intake with a quadrijet and all this, because they could say, oh, yeah, this is a 270 horse base motor. Everyone's like, oh yeah, great, it runs 11s. It's not a base motor. But they want to be able to swear by it. And they'll even put, if you're really sharp, you'd put 283 valve covers on it so that it says 283, because then it's official, right? Then it's actually a 283, no matter what size it is, even if it's a 383 or a 483. So you'd put that on there. But then the other way to go is when you open the hood, because you're a car guy, and even if you're not at a car show, if you're just over talking to other car guys, the first thing you should ask, if a guy is showing you his cars, you want to look under the hood. That's part of the deal. That's like listening to an idol. You start it, oh, let me hear it. Oh yeah, that sounds good. You want to pop the hood, dude, pop the hood. Let's see it. Let's check it out. So when you pop the hood, and even if it's really fast and you pop the hood and go, yeah, but I got it all in, sleeper mode. For a lot of guys, that could mean, well, you just didn't do anything to it. And it's in sleeper mode because it's not anything else. You didn't do anything to it, and now it's just the way that it was. Or maybe it is a 383. Maybe it's got a hidden nitrous kit. Maybe those are painted aluminum heads. Maybe it's all of those things, because I've seen both of those. But the thing is, when you pop the hood and you show somebody something, that's one of the arguments I have against actually swapping an LS in it, is that you get that. You go to the wrecking yard and you get a 5.3 and you put it in there and you swap it in. And it's going to run good, because even if it's a stock Elm 753, it's going to run good, but it's not going to look good. It doesn't have nice valve covers on it. In fact, it's got coil packs in the way of everything that look terrible. It's got that plastic truck intake manifold. Again, all of the stuff just works perfect. It does exactly what you want it to do. except it doesn't look good doing it. And so there's an argument to be had for other things, which is why in the LS world, why the fabricated sheet metal manifolds, painted or polished, or polished aluminum, why those sell so well. Because let's face it, a truck manifold looks terrible. As good as it works, and it works better than the fancy shiny one, but it just doesn't look the part. A bigger throttle body looks better. Getting rid of the coil packs looks better. It doesn't help power at all. And in some cases, like with the intake, it actually hurts power. But when you pop the hood and you can show people, they're like, oh yeah, that looks really good. And the reality is that, like with the LS stuff, even if you have the fancy shiny fabricated manifold and it loses power and you have a turbo, you don't lack for power anyways. You only know that you should be making more or could be making more because that Richard guy put a video up that showed the long runner truck manifold did better. And then all the guys that didn't step up and get the shiny manifold that makes it look good, they got truck manifolds, they didn't spend the money, then all they're going to do is make fun of you for doing the thing that made your combination look better. And the reality is you're still making lots of power. So on the small block Chevy stuff, a nice carburetor. And on the carburetor, I didn't even just get a new carburetor. We got a new one, and then it had like the chrome plated bowls, and you could get ones with the billet metering blocks that are different colors, and you can make all that stuff fancy. So you can go to the nth degree. And I even saw, which I thought was interesting recently, in one of the magazines, or somebody posted it somewhere, somebody was doing chrome plating. And so this used to be big back in like the 80s and the 70s, I think. I can remember looking at the car magazines and on when they were doing Pro Street stuff, and even a little before that, one of the big things for show cars was, you had polished aluminum and you had chrome plated stuff, and then people started anodizing but also they were chrome plating stuff. So anything that didn't move, instead of just being chrome plated, was gold plated. So they're spending literally gold money on their stuff. And I saw this again, and it made me wonder if that sort of thing is like going to come back around. Although the cost of gold now, back compared to back what it was then, is quite a bit higher. So I would imagine gold plating stuff is probably fairly costly. But again, it comes back to, do you want to, when you pop the hood, do you want to look nice? Do you want to look clean? Now there's, if you look at something that's really efficient and nice and nicely done and everything's laid out, so there's access to everything, it usually looks fairly nice. And then if you go out of your way to make it look clean and use polished stuff or do stainless hardline for your fuel or those kinds of things, all of that looks good. So I'm like, when I look at those and I see a really nicely done engine compartment, even if it's all fancy and showy, I appreciate that. I know the kind of work that it took to make that look that good. And to me, I like the fact that somebody has the vision to see what that's going to look like before they're done. Because the only way that you can get that thing looking the way that it ends up looking, that's not usually by trial and error. They usually don't try 15 different valve covers and eight different colors on the intake manifold and all these various combinations. A lot of these guys that are really good, have the ability to see these things before they're there. Painters are a perfect example. They can see that color is going to look nice. They don't just paint it and go, oh, you know what, that turned out really good. They know going in, at least the good ones know going in, that's going to look good. And their combination of body paint and wheels and all that stuff, it's really an art to that. And it's the same thing with engine compartments. I like guys that can do really clean Sano kind of engine compartments, and those look good. So I appreciate that. I also appreciate popping the hood and looking at it and having it be like 100% stock. So I'm putting together the L78, the 375 horse 396 or 425 horse 396, if you believe the 1965 Corvette literature. I'm putting together one of those, and I'm making it look like it was an original one. It has the same air cleaner and valve covers and all that stuff, so that it looks good. And I like that look too. I appreciate it if a guy is, even if he's not doing because some guys with the restoration stuff drive me a little bit nuts. Oh, but it had this paint slash on it, and it had this kind of overspray and all that. that might be a little bit much, but I do like the fact that when you pop a hood on if it's a 69 Z28 and it looks all 69 Z28, that's also cool. And even if a guy has one that's a driver and it's all stock and just has a stock air cleaner on it, and it's the way that it came, or the guy hasn't put any effort into it, and it's like my truck, and it's just the way that it came, and he's using it every day. I understand that too. I understand all of it. And my way leaving it stock like that and not even cleaning it the way that I should on occasion is kind of lazy. But the other stuff is good. So all the stock stuff, in a reproduction kind of way is good, and a modified way is good if it's done nicely. And then even extreme stuff like show stuff, that's all good stuff, because it all takes talent, and I appreciate all that. So let me know what you guys think on doing that. I've got some, because we're moving, I've gone through a bunch of stuff, boxes that I haven't opened for years or whatever. I have, so if anybody's interested, I have one of these, which I did a search for this because I wanted to see. I didn't know from Car Tech what they were selling them for. I'm going to sign this one for whoever wants it. I only have one of these Dyno Proven LS books. This one is, I don't know, let's say $25 shipped, and I'm going to sign it. But I looked this up, and the two that I found were $298. And I don't know exactly what they were, because the photo that they were using was this, but this photo was different. So I don't know exactly what it was, but these are not worth $298. So if you guys are thinking about getting it and then reselling it, trust me, it's not worth that much. So I didn't understand what that was, but I thought it was interesting to go on there and look and see. So I have one of these. If you're interested in that, I'll go ahead and put my email and then send me something and let me know that you're interested. That's my email. I also have a couple of copies of this. This is the Honda K-Series book. So if you're interested in Honda K-Series, again, I'll sign all these. I think I have 4 or 5 of these. So if you're interested in that one, I found a couple of those. They give me a couple copies after I finish writing the book, after I get it done and get it in, and before they're released. They send me a couple copies that I can then send out to people to do reviews and things like that to help promote it, and that's what these are. And then I have one other one. This one was not a Car Tech one. This one was from HP Books. This is B series Honda stuff. So and these are all dyno books, basically how to modify them. So this one includes a B16, B17, B18, B18A and B, C, and B17A, B16A, obviously B20. Lots of basically dyno testing that we did with turbos and blowers and nitrous and all that stuff. So I have a few of these too. Again, I put my email address down. If you guys are interested, let me know, and we'll send those out to you so that I don't have to pack them. It'll be a lot better. But I found a lot of other cool books. Like I've got some of these kinds of books on 928s and 944s, and I found my old 1975 through I think 82 or 83 Porsche Turbo book. Lots of stuff that I remember going through like 100 times. I did see that Cletus got a Steve Morris engine. That's pretty cool. That should make a lot of power. I've only done rotary stuff, Joe, on the engine or on the chassis dyno. Jeremy, I spent a lot of time driving job site to job site, and your videos play pretty much all day, every day on my phone. That's awesome. The material is helpful, and I enjoy the channel. Just thought I'd let you know. Thank you. I'm going to be doing some more how-to stuff coming up, and then also some interview stuff with industry people. So that will be coming up. So you think that they're going to hurt that motor on the first run? Morris knows how to build pretty good stuff as long as they can do the tune-up. You don't know what Rotex, you don't know what Honda engine you have. Top drive, with the BTR truck Norris cam swap into an LQ9, would it run with factory tune until I could take it to a tuner? It might run at very light throttle, but my guess is you won't be able to run it at light throttle, and so you probably will hurt it. because what it's going to do is the thing is going to be lean, and it's going to be lean and have the wrong timing. So it's going to be making more power. And so the chances are very, very good that you hurt it if you go out and go wide open throttle with putting a cam in and don't have it tuned. I'm also putting a GT45 rear turbo and shooting for 10 to 15 pounds. I don't know what combination that is, whether that, I don't know what engine that you have. And you'll want to not use the question thoughts. You'll not want to use that here. Otherwise, there will be no answer. Do you recommend any books on learning anything about LS engines and modifications? That the book that I have there, and I have other ones out on the Gen 4 stuff as well, it's just dyno testing. So it shows you a chapter on intake manifolds. What if you use all these intake manifolds? All these videos are up, so you can look at that for nothing. You don't have to buy a book. But it has chapters on turbocharging and supercharging and nitrous and cylinder heads and intake manifolds and throttle bodies and stuff. So it covers basically everything on there. And here, if you ask questions about your combination, all you need to do is ask the right question. So the question I would recommend you asking is, how can I make whatever power amount you want to make, and make it realistic? You don't need 1,000 horsepower if you're just starting out. How much will a camshaft add to my LS? If I have a 5.3 and I want to put a cam in it, how much is it going to add? Everybody here by now has watched all the videos, so they know how to answer that. Eric, I still say the best interior is no interior at all, just a dash, steering wheel, and pedals to mash. I want to be a goer, but I'm more of a shower right now. They've got a tune from Morris. Morris is really good at what he does with the motors. Still have to be complete. I'm not an LS guy, but they don't seem to have or need all the tiny mods like older V8s. A lot of combinations, small block Chevys, especially smog era small block Chevys, and Ford 5 liters are another good example. There's not just one thing holding them back. With the LS, they have really good heads. They have a really good intake manifold. They have enough displacement. They have enough static compression. The thing that's holding them back is mild stock cam timing, especially with cathedral or rectangular port LS stuff. If you put a camshaft in, you're in an LS3 or even a 6-liter or rectangular port headed motor, you're going to be a hero, because you have cylinder heads that are essentially race cylinder heads for a small block Chevy on a stock motor. And it's just like, it has 600 plus horsepower cylinder heads. It just needs the cam timing to get going. Somebody said that they have a Fox Body 1988. I have one of those as well. I think I'll go from EFI to carb. What do you think of going from EFI to carb? I got a B303, but I don't have an A9L. My 88 is a California car, so it was a mass air car. So it worked really well with cam upgrades. But you can put a carburetor on there. And if you get rid of the factory HO intake manifold and put like a dual plane and a carburetor, you're going to pick up a pretty good bit of power from the factory intake manifold. I don't really care about looks, but my aviation background is my worst enemy. The bends on my wire looms need to be just right. Bends on hoses, clamps, and standoffs. Yeah, sometimes when you decide everything's going to be perfect, it takes time. Dodgy Brothers, Richard, what size eBay turbo would you put on a stock 427? Is looking to make about 8 pounds of boost. The boost level is And I'm not concerned about what the boost level is. I need to know what engine family that is and what power it made NA to figure out what kind of turbo you want. I'm working on a budget. LS Junkyard is $500 and all the fuel lines, electrical connections go right back on. That's good. Sounds crazy, but it's getting tough even to find a small block Chevy here. We have lots of small block Chevys in the wrecking yards over where we are. They're all truck motors, but there's lots of those. I was thinking of getting some GT40 heads. GT40 heads for a Ford are a cheap way to add power, especially compared to the stock stuff. They're definitely better than stock. They're not as good as inexpensive aftermarket heads, but Admiral, I have a Gen 2 LT4 that's like 95% there. They might mail to Richard. Don't mail it to me. I think Brian Tooley has a Gen 2 LT4. Okay, I was gonna say I think he has a Gen 5 LT4. Richard, I'm seeing things about the Ford Godzilla motor. Do you ever plan on testing one? I think that they're doing a pretty good job with Brian and Evan on those already. I don't have one of those, and they're pretty expensive still. I don't foresee getting one of those in the future. Have you ever run a Vinci cam? I'm not familiar with those, so no. Noodles is in the house. Oh, dodgy. It's a big block 427. Not sure of what gen. Well, if it's a 427, then it's a Mark IV because they didn't make them in Gen 5s or Gen 6s. Oval ports. If it's got a stock cam in it, it's not a 427 tall deck, right? It's not a tall deck truck motor. It's a regular 427. So if it's a 427 oval port passenger car engine, it's going to be fairly low on power. I'm thinking it's going to be, so a Gen 6 is going to be 360 or 370. So I'm thinking that that's probably going to be in the low 300s, 330 or something. Kind of like a Gen 5 is. Kind of like a Gen 5 454 is. So 8 pounds is not going to be a lot. A single GT45 will support that, and it'll be really responsive. You'll start running into back pressure depending on how you modify that 427, but it'll be super responsive. Is there a thing like low octane turbo builds? Yeah, you can run turbos on low octane. You just have to have not very much timing. You have to have good intercooling. Still thinking about putting a Coyote in your Fox. That would be cool. Is sleeving a 6-liter LS worth it? Why do you want to sleeve it? Are you trying to make lots of power? The block isn't too much of an issue for 1,000 horsepower stuff. I don't know how much you're trying to do. I'm getting impatient sitting up here away from your project. All this chat doesn't help. We'll stop talking about car stuff then. We'll talk about movies. How about that? Chevy 350 with dual 390 carbs, good throttle response or too much choke. Can you make the dual carburetors progressive? And 390s on a tunnel ram actually work fairly well. Sean, I was also thinking of a 351. A 351 would be my choice over a 302. And a 351 with those heads, with the GT40 heads, the problem is you're going to have to drill out, and I keep forgetting about this. You're going to have to drill out the GT40 heads because they're set up for 7/16 head bolts or head studs. And a 351 has 1/2 inch. And so you're going to have to drill out the heads, which is a little bit of a pain for people. For me, we just clamp the head down. I just do it with a drill. But a lot of guys want to put it in a mill or a drill press. Richard, what's the max nitro shot you would spray on a cammed LS3? Well, if you have enough ring gap in it and you've got a good cam in it, that motor is going to make 550. So we've done 300 shots on 450 horsepower 5.3s. Maybe that's not recommended, but you could spray that much on an LS3. Is it carbureted, or are you blowing through the factory LS3 intake manifold? If you're blowing through the factory LS3 intake manifold, you're going to have problems. You need to just have it be a dry shot going through the manifold and then add the fuel through the injectors if you're doing that. Or if it's a carbureted one and it's a plate system, then you can run a lot more. I remember the J2000. Yeah, that's a Pro Street car. Did you see the video with Lazar and his nitrogen powered C4? Is it Bob Lazar? Is that what you're talking about? Super Richie Machine Shop. That's right. I'll freehand it. Michael, I'm a form follows function kind of guy. When I see a numbers matching classic, I guess if that's what he or she likes, it's not my cup of tea. So easy to modernize it. It is. I mean, I understand wanting to have a numbers matching car, and I understand the allure of that, and there is value in that. I don't think I'd want to build a car just because I thought it was going to be valuable, like for money. I would rather drive it. I would rather build it so I could drive it. So in that case, I like the car that I want, that I will have probably next year, is some kind of muscle car, hopefully a Chevelle, but it won't be something that's a numbers matching deal. It's something that looks like a Chevelle SS, but will ride and drive around. You know, it's still going to be fast because that's how we do it. But it's not going to be something that's cantankerous and drives terrible. I have 2 sets of 351 Lightnings. Joe, building for drifting a 408 stroker, want to run 8,500 RPM. Any cam suggestions, rockers and springs, all 3 heads, get me around 300. I don't know why you want to run that engine speed, why that's mandatory. You're going to have trouble. You need to get the right camshaft. You're going to have to spend some money to have the right camshaft to make that work. Having the stock LS3 heads at 8,500 on a 408, you have to have a really, really short manifold and lots of camshaft, and the camshafts are going to have to be super stable on that combination. Richard, what do you think of a Toyota FX60? I think that they're awesome. I like those almost as much as I like the AE86s. Box body 5-liter with machine ported E7TE heads and professional products intakes, also ported stock forged forged bottom end, 75mm throttle body, Haltech and Torque-Storm. What size injectors do I need? For 600 to 700 horsepower. Are you running a turbo on this thing or something? Oh, a Torque-Storm. Are you running on an E85? 80 pounders would work on there. I have a big chrome valve cover on my stock 250-66 Bel Air in high school. The thing that I remember, the thing that stands out to me is I had a 260Z, and I had some nice stuff on it. I had side drafts on it and a few, like, you know, steel braided lines with the red and blue anodized fittings, but I remember going over to this gentleman's house, and he had the nicest Z in town. It was a 240. It was early, but it was red, but it was like pristine. It was, you know, it was a show quality paint job and stuff. And when he popped the hood, he had a polished, you know, it was a factory valve cover, but it was polished aluminum, and he had side drafts on his, and, you know, it was all fancy. I just remember the polished aluminum valve cover just always stood out to me, and it always made that engine compartment. And the rest of it was all detailed very nice because it was all painted to match the body and stuff, and it was really nice. But I will always remember that, how nice that thing was. The shelves are empty because we are moving. Just always wanted a high RPM motor. Okay. Is piston speed still a thing anymore with bigger stroke engines? Well, piston speed is always a thing, but the 8,000 to 8,500 RPM range, piston speed's not relevant. I mean, it's not the limiting factor. It's always valve train in that RPM range. Rufus, does anybody know for Rufus which 97 4L80E transmission controller is cheap but effective? I'm not versed on that. William, what is the highest compression ratio on an NA engine that you have run with E85? I've never built a super high compression NA motor, but you could run any conceivable static compression ratio on an NA motor that you wanted on E85. It has enough. I mean, it's the 85s that we've run are somewhere near 110 rated octane, and plus it has cooling because it has a high alcohol content. So you get away with anything that you want NA, considering the fact that we're running 20 or 30 pounds of boost with it. So that's not going to be a problem. I don't know about the combination of boost and compression on that. There's so many other factors. That's not the only thing. Does it have intercooling? What is the chamber shape, and what is the camshaft, and all that stuff? 88 convertible Mustang for summer, stock block 351. What are your go-to heads? An airflow research head would, if you have your choice of anything, that's probably what I would go with. Will the comp 274 cam work with stock heads without hitting the pistons? I'm going to get the cam to go with the torque storm. You're going to have to check. You're going to have to make sure that it has piston to valve clearance. With a stock head, I think it's going to work. But I don't know what piston you have, and I don't know what your piston to valve clearance is. Charlie, 5.3 liter LM7 block, 383 stroker, forged internals, cam, ported heads with an LSA supercharger. An LSA supercharger will support 700 wheel horsepower. It will make that much if you spin it fast enough and you have a big enough inlet going into the supercharger. Doesn't Sloppy Mechanics have a bunch of stuff about running the standalone off of a stock computer? I don't know. They might. Matt's pretty good with a lot of the factory tune stuff. I saw a comp cam video of 11,200 RPM. Made me want something LS higher RPM. People always have high horsepower LS or high boost, but not a lot of RPM builds. Okay. The 11,200 thing, I think, is probably Ben's over at EFI University. That's the Spinal Tap one, I think. The other thing that's impressive about that is that thing has over an inch of lift. It's a big camshaft, but he spent a couple years on the Spintron to get it to work. Kenneth, you're going to the wrecking yard tomorrow, hopefully to get a 5.9 Magnum and have a 8.1 follow you home. That's good. Have you seen Lone Star Drift's convertible or converted circle track drift car? I have not. Goodman, we run pump E85. I've also run some of the race stuff too, but just because they had it at West Tech. For me, there wasn't. Excuse me, there wasn't a difference. Oh, Tom, that's right. We need a poll for tonight, right? And Tom, I just finished a story for Summit Racing on the putting the blower on the LS. We're going to ask a 462 valve question tonight. Can a stock bottom end 462 valve modular Ford, you know, from a 99 Mustang GT, make 1,000 horsepower with turbos before something in the stock bottom end breaks? So inquiring minds want to know. That is our poll for tonight. Thanks for the reminder, Tom. Tuning a dad's car goes rumors. Tuning 4.8 liter on spray, sloppy stage 2 cam, tuning on 93, then E85, probably 100 to 150 wet through a nozzle. Any suggestions? Yeah, 100 shot, a lot of times we don't even take timing away, especially if we have good gas in it. On 93, I might not take timing away. On 100, on 150, I definitely would. And I don't know, on E85, you might be able to get away with not taking any timing away. We like to just because I think it's a little bit safer. But try it by taking 4 degrees out and see what happens, and then run it, and then you'll know. Is Summit going to start selling the adapters? No, this is just a story they wanted me to. I just do stories for them so they can post them up. For how long? I don't know. Like if you look at the other Big Bang motors that we did, a lot of them made lots and lots of runs over 1,000 horsepower. Rods are good for 450 to 600 horsepower. That's a pretty big spread, but we know that they're good for more than both of those because I've run both of those many, many times on supercharged and turbo versions of stock 462 valves. Todd, let me know what happens with that. Any updates on the giveaway Nova? Yeah, he's been sending me texts. The last one he sent, it was up on the lift. He was doing work to it. Does the force of the piston escaping through the oil pan? So you think it's going to go downward when it breaks? I built a 4.6 Texid with a Cobra crank and 4340 rods and pistons, and I sold it and bought an LS. The thing that's nice about the LS compared to the modular Ford is it always seemed like it was much easier to make NA power out of the LS than it was out of even the 4-valve stuff. It seemed like it took it because, you know, buying 4 cams is fairly expensive. You can make good power out of them. I mean, look at Mahovitz did. They certainly are not shy on power. Dad's cars, that's because you're the man, Richard. That actually, it just happened not because I thought it was going to or because I'm good at what I do. We just didn't know any better. I got a motor from the wrecking yard. It was even a 98 non-PI, and we had done tests with putting the PI heads on it, different cams and stuff, and not knowing any better, we just put a Vortec on it, and then we put a Kenny Bell on it, and then we put nitrous on it, and so it could take that, right? Sure. Also curious about 5.3 rec port heads. There are none of those, but it's actually something I want to do. I've never seen anybody put any on there because the valves will hit the small bores. Any chance of getting what motors going in the Nova? No, not for me. Just keep the timing below 15 degrees, below 5150. Why did you choose 5150? Are you talking about 5250, the crossover for horsepower and torque? Dodgy, that's actually what I'm thinking about doing, is I just want to notch the side of the bore like we did with the 396 on a 5.3 so I can run rec port heads on it and just totally make them worthless. For the pull on 4.6 crank, yes. Rods, no. It's just a stock bottom end 4.62 valve, not with a Cobra crank, just the stock PI stuff. Edward, Richard, I'm targeting 550 wheel horsepower. That's a lot. 331, small block Ford, stock block, girdle, AFR 185 heads, track, TFS track heat, GT45. A GT45 is more than enough to do that power level. Fringe, the YouTube algorithm god sent me here with autoplay. So perfect. Well, welcome. Richard, video idea. Could you go over doing a dyno hit? Like what all the buttons do, and talk more about loading up and building up heat and so. You mean on a turbo combination? Racing, what is your input on timing curves? I read for a 347 wants full advance at 4,000 RPM. How does it all work? It's more complicated than that. 347 doesn't necessarily want it all at 4,000. It might want it earlier than that. If you look back at the carbureted days, if you had an ignition kit, like if you had your ignition recurved, what they're going to do is make it come in faster, so that you have all the timing. Usually on those kits, and the way that a lot of carbureted stuff runs on the street, is it may have full advance by 3,000, certainly by 3,500. So all of the timing is in, and that's usually before the torque peak. That may or may not be okay. On a naturally aspirated motor, like on a carbureted deal, naturally aspirated, that can work fairly well. We've run lots of NA motors with full timing through the whole RPM range. Normally, they don't need anywhere near full timing, loading it down at 2,000 RPM. They don't make any more power. They don't make any less power, but they don't make any more power. And if we lower that down from, let's say it wants 36 degrees, if we lower it down to 30 or down to 25 at 2,000 RPM, and it doesn't make any less power, it should be lowered there. So what I like to do when we're running stuff, and this is a lot easier fuel injected than it is carbureted because it's hard to do the distributor, but when it's fuel injected, we put in as little timing as makes the maximum amount of power. So I may start off with 20 on an NA motor. Let's say I might start off with like 20 degrees of timing. Let's say I'm running it from 2,000 to 6,000 RPM. So I'll start off with 20 degrees of timing everywhere, and then go, okay, and then dial in the airfield curve and all that's right. And then we'll start raising timing. Okay, so let's go up 2 degrees. We go up 2 degrees everywhere. Okay, so now it's 22 everywhere. We make another run. Did it pick up power? Well, it really didn't pick up very much power down low. Okay, well, then we know that we don't need to add any more timing there. So let's keep it at 22, or even go back down to 20 if we didn't gain anything. Well, we started gaining from 4,000 to 6,000. Okay, so we don't need to go any more timing below that. Let's go up another 2 degrees or 1 degree, depending on how close we're getting to the maximum. Let's go up another 2 degrees from 4,000 on up. Okay. And then we'll keep doing that. And pretty soon we'll build a curve that the motor wants. And also, and this is the important part for me, is that we don't have more timing than we need in other places. And the motor will tell us what it likes and what it responds to. Whether or not you could do that on the street is a different thing at higher temperatures and under hood and all that. A lot of times on the chassis dyno or on the street, it's going to respond to, or you'll be able to run less timing there than we do on the engine dyno. And so you won't be getting the maximum amount of power. If you could get cold air to it and run the water temperature colder like we do on the engine dyno, you could run more timing and it would make more power. But that's the way that I build a curve. And then once I've established the NA curve, then the boosted curve is just a function of that, starting from that. Can a stock Gen 6 454 rods and pistons handle 2,000 horsepower? I wouldn't think that they would. I've never tried it, and I welcome you to try it, but I don't think so. Have you done anything on differences between generations of turbos? If you're talking about like the VS Racing stuff at Gen 1 and Gen 2, I only have a Gen 2 78, 75. So I don't know what those upgrades are, but the guys that did the turbos probably have a fairly good idea. Boosted Lifestyle ran the rec port heads on a 5.3. He trashed the valves in the block. Well, there's if you push the valve, if you put those heads on and push the valve down, the valve hits the block. So it won't actually go down very far before the valve actually hits. So what you have to do is notch the block, which is it's easy to do, and it's done on a lot of stuff. Like the 396 is the same thing. The small bore 396 big block and a 219 rec port head with a 219 intake valve. If you push that valve down, it'll hit the bore. It'll hit the side of the block. That's why they notch it. And I want to do that on a 5.3 or a 4.8. So I want to run factory rec port heads. And so I'm going to do careful measurement and know how much, because I can put a head gasket on there that seals around the outside of that. It's the wrong thing to do. A 5.3 doesn't want a rec port head on it, but it will be cool because it will be the first time that anybody's ever done it in the history of the world. The engine I'm referring to is a Ford D347 SR race engine, 34 degrees of timing at 4,000, and it's a Z304 head. Different heads will respond to different levels of timing. Victor Jr. intake, F303 cam, and a 650. Cooper, I was wondering, because they kept making new turbos, it's hard to tell what's marketing sometimes. I think that they're trying to make them better, but the thing is, if the turbo that's not the better one, not the stage 2 version, will already support the power level that you want, you don't need the newest, latest, and greatest thing. You just need the thing that's going to do the thing that you want it to do. Todd, if you're getting pillar gauges, I like to have a boost gauge there because that's the one that you're going to look at the most often, the one that I like. Oil pressure is a good idea, and temperature is a good idea. You just have to be careful that you don't notch below the top ring. Yep. Getting valve released in the block sounds pretty wild. Actually, you just do it with a die grinder. A cathedral port head on a 5.3 is really the way to go. It's a better choice than a rec port head is, but I want to show that. Jason, I think I want to take back my Holley mid-ram now. That's not a good intake choice. I mean, again, like we were talking about, the show versus go thing, it looks cool if you put 2 carburetors on or 2 throttle bodies or whatever. Some guys want to run the lid on it that looks like a high ram that has a front mounted throttle body. But if you look at all the testing that I've done on it, it doesn't perform nearly as well as the high ram does, and not as good as the long runner stuff does. You would think that version, given its name, would be like maybe better down low than the high ram, but it wasn't a great thing. What about a 5.3 with an LSA? That would be a great reason to notch the block for rec port heads. I have a friend with an LSA setup with a 58 bug. See, now that would be interesting, Rick. That's a good idea. That might be an application where you do what I'm talking about and then put rec port heads on it and then put the LSA blower on there if you're going to put an LSA blower on it. That way you don't have to run the cathedral port heads and then the adapter and then the LSA blower. But again, I don't know which one of those would be better. Ford Z03 heads versus AFR 205s. I think the airflow would be better. Yeah, you can do oil temp or oil pressure or water temp. I would imagine that does your dash already have a water temp in it? 5.3 with a rec port heads and a blower. It's just going to be the blower. I mean, we know what they do. Whatever the NA curve is, then the blower just adds to that. 6.2 LS Batwing oil pan versus LS3 oil pan. Mostly daily on the street in a C5 Corvette. Well, aren't you limited in a C5 Corvette in what fits in a C5 Corvette? I don't know what chassis specific pans work on that. How is our poll doing here? Can a stock bottom end 462 valve make 1,000? We're split kind of, make 1,000 horsepower with turbos before it breaks. So 55% are saying yes, and 45% are saying no, that it will not do it. What bug are we talking about? I hate talking about this kind of stuff because then what happens is the other YouTube channels, I think this is where they get their ideas from, and then they run off and do it. Yeah, I'm not sure. I've never run anything near that power on a stock bottom end 462 valve. I've never tried it. We've done, like I said, I'm thinking 700 or something like that with a centrifugal blower. I can't remember on our turbo stuff. I think we've only run 600 or something with the turbo stuff. Yeah, the notch in the bore is not going to go down below the ring, but you still have the second ring to seal it. Wheelbase for a clean engine, less is more. Pick one color, limit shiny parts. Be OCD consistent with clamps. No, the clamps should be haphazardly done with zip ties as well. Bolts and fittings and de-logo the aftermarket parts. It's not NASCAR sponsorship under there. But for a lot of guys, it is. For a lot of guys are proud that they have a Holley carburetor or a comp cam or an MSD distributor or whatever. Definitely wait for you to put rec ports on it. Yep. Maybe the Cobra Fords. I know the Cobra Fords 4.6 will easily do 1,000 horsepower. We've already done that. I think we can notch it so that it's like even with the compression height of the piston. But I don't think we're going to get into the ring. Oh, I like the idea of twisting. I've never done that actually. Who hasn't lent the car home with a coat hanger twisted into a hose clamp? That would work. I've never tried that. But you know, you got to do what you got to do. What's the best carb? I don't know. We use Hollies on a lot of stuff, and they always work pretty well. I'm surprised that people have so many problems with carburetors because we take them out of the box and put them on, and they work really well. And they work really well on a lot of different combinations. We take them off of a small block and put them on a big block, and take them off a Chevy and put them on a Ford. And I mean, for wide open throttle, obviously it's a lot easier. But I've got a D1SC on my Gen 2 LT1. That should run good. That's a 1,000 horsepower blower potential on a good motor, so that should work out pretty well. So your mixture of German and Swiss, if you notch the block, you'd have to go down a crazy rabbit hole. You'd have to CC the notches. Well, why would you care about CCing the notches? Because you want to change you're worried about changing the compression. You're already putting a cylinder head on that has giant valves and oversized ports and really big chambers. It's already ruined. Shoelaces is a belt. Yeah, all of that's a pantyhose people have done. Drove a diesel truck with 30 miles home with a gutted Bic pen. Yeah, you got whatever you got to do. You got to do. I hope to see a Pontiac on the. Yeah, that would be cool to run a Pontiac on the dyno. For a well-mannered streetcar, I prefer Edelbrock's. Okay. I like the Brawler carburetors. I want to see Richard get his hands on an LT6. Pantyhose as a strainer. I've seen that before. Daniel. Yeah, we don't know if it'll work. I've never tried a 2-valve 4.6 at 1,000 horsepower. I don't know if it will get there. Isn't an LS3 isn't an LS3 injector 46 pounds? If it is, they'll make a lot. Has someone done 1,000 horsepower with a stock bottom end? That's my question. So I always get these comments about I'm taking a look at the LS injector guide here. L33, LS2, LS3. So 42. So if we multiply 42 times 16, we get 670 horsepower NA. Didn't you get that old Pontiac that you were planning on to maybe turbo? I don't have a Pontiac right now. So who pays for the building repair? We tried to blow them up that big. So Eric, you want to see the North Star on the dyno? Green, go to Wallace Racing calculators and just do a search for Wallace Racing compression calculators, and you just put all of your data in, and it'll tell you exactly what your static compression is. 71 milliliter chamber, 71 cc chamber, maybe. That's about what a stock LY6 compression is. It's 69 to 70 on a stock head. I've never done an AMC motor. Yeah, 42 pound an hour is 670 horsepower. Just multiply it by 16. Millimeters and cc's are the same? Oh, milliliters and cc's are the same. Okay. See, I'm learning. I know Dan's not here. I haven't seen him. It's been a long time since I ran a 2-valve motor. Man, it's been years since I ran one. That means I got to get I'd have to get a whole new one, and I want to do a ported head and head studs and some kind of intake manifold. And you know what it would help is if I ran a short runner intake manifold on it, which I have. I've never heard anybody refer to the chamber size in milliliters. That's what threw me off, and just being generally not very smart. Never answered who pays for the repair. The reason I ask is in the videos, the ceiling above the engine stand looks like something went flying through the ceiling and tape was used. You'd have to tell me which video that is, because a lot of these videos are from a lot of years ago. Three-valve flat tops and a 2-valve. Are you asking if you could do that? I'm sure you could. Richard, would softening the heads affect NA power? I think I don't know if you'd be able to soften it without changing the cc's of the chamber. I don't know how you would get that back if you soften the head. So you're going to have a slight drop in static compression, which would affect power. I'm not being French enough. I don't think I have that. See, I had no idea. I don't remember using milliliters for anything. It's not because I'm not a metric guy. I use metric stuff all the time. I lose 10 millimeter sockets all the time. So we're going to end our poll. 56% saying yes. So we're on the positive side of the yes, it will do it. We want. I'm sure that's more that we want to see it more than anything else. Oh, Charles, I do have an old Pontiac. I have a 347, but I'm not going to do a big bang on that. I just kind of wanted to run it, but I haven't found a bell housing for that. How did you ever run the 468 LS under boost? I don't know if I ran the 468 with boost. Yeah. The bad thing is if I stay in the dyno cell when I'm at West Tech and I have tools, then I set it down somewhere in there. It's when I walk out, if we were stopping to go to lunch, or I go to pick something else up in the other cell, or on my way, or go over to where the mill and the grinder and all that stuff. Then you set it down somewhere, and a 10mm socket fits perfectly, like in lots of places that are no longer visible after you set it there. And everything else, a wrench or a screwdriver or whatever it is. Have you ever done any tests on a 464 valve, like an 01 Cobra motor or something? Yes. Lots of stuff on an 03 Cobra. I don't know if we ran boost. I'd have to go back and look and see if we ran. I think we did run boost on another Cobra motor from Sean Hyland. How do you CC ahead? Well, our thing reads in CCs, right? Or does it read in milliliters and I've just been reading it wrong every time when I measure it? So, Dean, you don't know if it's going to be a rod or a ringland? The Terminator is a good motor. They're hard to find, but does painting an engine affect its cooling? You mean, does it like hold the heat in? I wouldn't think so. But maybe that is a. I'd like to see if it's actually a measurable effect. Does it actually change under the same load? Does it actually change like the temperature of the coolant or something? Aaron, typically what people want is a flat top piston. So whatever gets you the static compression that you want with a flat top piston, whether that's the smaller or the bigger chamber, usually for racing applications, usually that what they want is a small chamber and a flat top style piston. They don't normally want dome pistons because the flame travel is not as good. Why don't you ever include the 6.2 liter in your truck cam comparison? Because how many 6.2 liter engines did they use in trucks? And how many have we found in the wrecking yard? None. And it's the same as a 6 liter. It works the same. I have a 61 Pontiac, half of a 389. Are you have the 4-cylinder one? My friend Tom V knows a guy that has a bell housing for it. That's the same. I love to see it make some power. I'd like to run it just to see what it does. It's a 2-barrel motor right now. I wanted to put a tri-power on it and a cam and stuff in it just to see it work. But we need a bell housing for it, and the flywheel is also different on that Pontiac than it is on the other Pontiacs. Ours, I don't measure it with a syringe. On ours, we measure it with the burette with the little knob on the side of it. Well, Dean, we know a 281 will go there because we've already done that with 4-valve stuff. So if it flows enough, then it will make a number. Making the number is not hard, but whether or not the stock rods or stock pistons will handle it. High RPM 5.3 LS lifter favorite? I don't know. I think guys use LS7s or yeah, I think they use LS7s or the Johnson ones. Some sort of short travel lifter, probably, if you're going to run lots of RPM. How big can you get a 6-liter with just oversized pistons, but stock stroke? Not very big. Guys have told me that they've gone to 6.2s, so that you've gone to 4.165 bores, but I don't recommend it. Not 4.165, 4.065. Is there less low-end loss? There's still loss even in the displacement. It's just that the starting amount is going to be higher than it was on a 6-liter because the motor's already bigger. But there'll still be a loss there. Have you ever done a video with something like a 350 small block and show the difference between a hydraulic flat tappet, hydraulic roller, and solid flat tappet and solid roller, all in one cam type comparison? It's hard to make the cam the same for all of those because the ramp rate's going to be dramatically different. Yeah, cheeseburger, Pepsi. Charles, so yours, that 4-cylinder Pontiac motor is very cool. It made 700 wheel horsepower at 38 pounds. That's pretty cool. How did you get enough head flow to do that? Gonna put a carb 5.3. Okay, one more minute. I gotta get going. I got moving stuff to do. Yes. Do you think I can triple the power of my 400 small block? I got a 144 roots blower, nitrous. Think of adding a turbo to blow through, but would be beneficial. I don't know what your 400 is making now, but the roots blower is going to be in the way of trying to get that done. You just need a turbo to make more power. Tom, thanks for showing up. Okay, guys, I gotta get going. Thank you all for showing up. I will be back tomorrow.